mousetrap. I guarantee it's the craziest trap you'll ever see. The first to capture everyone else's...
Brings you new E.T. cereal, made with E.T.'s favorite flavors, chocolate and real peanut butter.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the wide and wonderful world of advertising. Advertising is an activity or profession that involves selling products or services via newspapers, magazines, radio, television, and the internet. Just add jingles, slogans, and entertaining background images to said product or service, and you're on the road to being able to sell anything. Well, maybe there's a little more to it than that. In fact, there are multiple in-depth parts of the human psyche as well as previously used persuasion tactics that advertisers have to study in order to get the perfect consumer reaction to their finished product. Those being the 5 senses, core emotions, and the most popular, advertising appeals. These can help advertisers discover a way inside the human mind to find out how we as a species tick, as well as how to sell us products and services successfully. I want you to join me on an educational journey into the world of persuasion via the multiple ways advertisers find a way inside the human mind. Let us do this by delving into the world of advertising techniques. Let's talk about the sensitive side of advertising with its use of the 5 senses. I'm going to start with the most obvious sense used, sight. What can I say about this sense? It's everywhere. Unless you're listening to a radio ad, you are forced to observe either a still ad in either a magazine, newspaper, or on the internet, or a moving video ad on either TV or, again, on the internet. Advertisers use these parts of this technique along with coloration, font, and editing to entice your eyes into watching the entire ad and possibly buying their products. Next, let's talk about taste, seeing how it's very similar to sight. In fact, it uses the same technique of enticing people to buy products by using visuals, such as the ones you're observing now. However, instead of enticing your eyes, they entice your taste buds into wanting to eat or drink whatever you are observing on the screen. They can also use free samples in stores to show you the taste of said product before you buy it. In fact, I'm going to be using this technique in an experiment I'm going to put on later on. But on to the next sense. Ah, my favorite sense, hearing. Yes, hearing spoken words describe the item or services you might want to buy is part of it.
Bustin' loose.
He's big.
And scary.
And helps people too.
And he's your friend too.
My pet monster plays all day.
But what I really love are the jingles.
Double your refreshment. Double your enjoyment. Oh no, single gum double freshens your mouth like double mint gum.
The jingles not only describe a product or service, but they provide a catchy song to remember said product or service as well. Next we have touch, and it is shown in a similar way to taste in that it describes the way a product feels. Whether soft and fluffy or smooth and sleek, this technique helps you experience the feel of a product without touching it yourself. If you do, however, want an example of something you can feel before you buy it, carpet samples are a good one. You get to feel how soft or how rigid a carpet will be before you buy it, and it definitely helps when it comes to deciding if you want to buy said product or not. The last and my second favorite sense is smell, and it is shown in an interesting way. Yes, partially by showing and describing the scent of something through the same technique as taste, but also through magazine perfume samples. Yeah, These come to you through fashion magazines and provide you with a free strip of perfume to help you decide if you want to buy said scent. I find these and the free food samples particularly fascinating as you get to try the product before you buy it. Now that we've looked at the sensitive side of advertising, let's look at the more emotional side with the core emotions and how they are used to sell products or services. I think we should start with our most basic core emotion, joy. These are simply the commercials and ads that make you feel happy and joyful. These make you feel happy whenever you think about a product or service, and thus make you want to buy said product or service to continue that feeling. Now let's discuss our second most basic core emotion, sadness. This is shown in a way that you may not expect. As you can see, the sadness usually precedes a happy ending. That way you go from feeling sad to happy, and the happy ending seems more powerful and gives you the same feeling as a joyful ad does, just amplified. This in turn amplifies the want for a product or service in question. Now we move on to disgust, which oddly enough can be used to sell a product or service. As you can see, it's mostly used to sell products or services that remove something gross from your life, such as insects or germs. The product in question will eliminate this for you, so of course you want to buy it. Next, we have fear, which I won't be going into much detail about, seeing how it is involved in my next area of techniques. Fear is commonly used for comedy purposes to shock people and entertain them. These commonly make people remember your product or service more and thus make people want to buy them. Finally, we have anger, another emotion that doesn't seem like it would sell anything, but does. Anger frustrates you, and the advertisers know this. They show you everything that makes you mad about certain agonizing situations, and then they show you how their product or service can make it better. This, of course, makes you want to buy said product or service to make your problems go away. Finally, let's discuss the most advertising-related and appealing advertising technique: advertising appeals. Advertising appeals are used specifically to get people watching or observing to buy products or services. Here are the most popular ones. Let's begin with fear, seeing how I mentioned it before. Fear can also be used to show what can happen if someone doesn't use a product or service. As you can see, they want you to buy their product or service, and if you don't, bad things will happen to you. Definitely a superior way to sell anything. Next, let's move on to my favorite appeal, humor. Humor is used to bring people together through laughter. When you're laughing at someone being funny and you see that they're supporting a product or service, you'll feel joy towards it and want to buy it yourself. It's a funny way to sell a product. On to rational appeal. Rational appeal shows the functionality and practicality of the product or service. As you can see, they show how useful and functional the product or service in question is, and of course, because of this, this makes you want to buy it. The next advertising appeal is rated PG-13, sex appeal. As you can see, this appeal uses our attraction to the human body and displays it in ad form. When you feel an attraction towards a fellow human that's holding or is somehow related to a product or service, you're going to want to buy said product or service. It's an attractive way to sell a product. For our final advertising appeal, we delve into one of the biggest fears people have, the fear of missing out. The bandwagon effect happens when you want to be a part of the action and involved with what's popular with other people. If you suddenly witness an ad where a lot of people are suddenly interested in a product or service, you're most likely going to want to buy it to blend in with everyone else. Now, if you're anything like me, you've asked yourself, what if it isn't the advertising that's persuading people to buy the product or service? That is to say, what if it is the product or service itself that brings people in? Well, in order to find out whether it is the advertising, or in this case, the product that attracts customers, I decided to do a public experiment. I made a poster advertising the experiment to passersby and gathered a picture of 2 Coke cans. One heavily advertised with Photoshop, and one a simple picture of a can of Coke. I then set up shop near a public park and held out my sign, waiting to ask interested people a few questions about their personal preferences regarding advertised products.
I would choose this picture just because the can itself looks really crisp and the water with it looks like it'd be a lot more refreshing than just a plain old Coke.
Which of these 2 pictures would you choose and why?
Definitely pick this one. It's just that splash of water makes it look way more refreshing, and I can just practically hear pop in the can and just the fizzle of it.
Which of these 2 pictures would you choose and why?
I chose this picture. I mean, this picture of Coke, it looks more inviting, it wants me to drink it. It looks really good from this compared to the other one, which it looked just boring, and I wouldn't want to drink something that's average like everybody else.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that just goes to show you, the more effort you put into trying to sell your product, whether it's water or paint while taking said photos or the Photoshop afterwards, the more likely people will have the urge to buy it. But that can be said for using any of the advertising techniques I mentioned today. And that was the wonderfully sensitive, wonderfully emotional, wonderfully appealing world of advertising techniques. When advertisers use sight, touch, taste, hearing, and smell, they help transport you to another realistic world involving their product or service, even though you're technically only using your eyes and ears at the time. When they show us examples of our core emotions, joy, sadness, anger, fear, and disgust, they reach deep inside us to use what makes us human to entice us towards the product or service, sometimes without a single word spoken. Finally, when they use their most popular types of advertising appeals such as fear, humor, rationality, sex, and the bandwagon appeal, they look at what we want most or what affects us most as humans and use that to persuade us towards buying their product or service. The science behind these fascinating processes of using media and persuasion to expand the business of a company is what keeps this practice going. With this knowledge of advertising techniques to help push products or services out into the world, I hope you and the other advertisers of today and tomorrow can help entertain the world with colorful imagery, jingles, and slogans while adding a science behind it. Thank you for watching, and be sure to check your local library and bookstores to learn about advertisers and their many techniques as well as the science behind advertising.